Welcome to Good News from St. Andrews, Guelph. My name's Reverend John Borthwick, and I'm your host here on Rogers every week, and it's my pleasure to be with you again today. We have an important conversation happening in our worship service this week, and it was truly a powerful experience to hear and to listen and bear witness to Stephen Jackson, who is the CEO of Anishnabeg Outreach, an Indigenous Center for Healing in our region. And just such an honor and a privilege to be in his presence and to hear his story and the work that he and his organization are doing in the work of reconciliation and justice and Indigenous healing. Just amazing work. So I really want to maximize that time for that conversation today. So our intro is going to be just a little shorter. Way back in June, we had a series of things before I broke my arm, a series going on around connecting our church context with the experience of Indigenous peoples in Canada. And we had done a number of things. You can look back way in June if you want to try and find those episodes, or go on YouTube as well if that's something that you're able to do. But essentially just touching on the ways in which the Presbyterian Church in Canada and the Christian Church in general had a very specific role in residential school systems, has had a very long history with creating sort of the way of understanding Indigenous peoples in the context of our globe, a concept called the Doctrine of Discovery from like the 1500s. This idea that when Europeans came from across the ocean and landed here on this land we now call Canada, the peoples that were there, they were told, they were indoctrinated, they were instructed. Those people weren't really people, was a part of it. The land that they had discovered was nobody's land, and therefore was open for colonization and open to be exploited in whatever way possible. And that's like 500-600 years ago, but that has rippled all the way through our history and our understanding and our relationships with the Indigenous community, and has had devastating impact on Indigenous people to this very day. That sort of generational trauma. Residential schools played a very powerful part in that further traumatization of Indigenous peoples generationally as well, again, to this day. And the Christian Church has a lot to answer for and a lot of work to do around how we heal those relationships, how we seek justice, and how we might begin a process of reconciliation. And so one of the things I just wanted to touch on briefly was we're getting close to Orange Shirt Day, or which now is being called our federal government Truth and Reconciliation Day across the country. And for federal employees, it's a day off. And I'd like to really encourage folks as we get closer to that day. This episode actually, I think, may premiere after that day. So, but just something to be thinking about when the government makes decisions about creating holidays and how we recognize these things in our daily living. A couple of really important things that we could think about and that we could do as a way of taking some action around this justice and healing and reconciliation work with the Indigenous community. If you're a part of a Christian church, or if you're non-Indigenous, if there's ways in which you want to connect and do something, I think doing something is important. And so one of the simple things, as it were, if you're able to read, is to find on the internet or find a resource that is the 94 calls to action. The 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's work several years ago. Read those calls to action. There are some very personal ones for individuals that you might take some action on. There are things that you could advocate for through, writing letters, emails, making phone calls to a newly elected government, things like that. And also, strongly encourage your church communities to do something, to create some action items that churches could do, because faith communities have actually been called out as a part of the calls to action. I can say that the Presbyterian Church in Canada has sought to answer many of those calls to action. We've done significant work, and I don't want to praise that. I think that's good that we acknowledge that we've done some of that work, not to say there isn't a lot more work to be done. And I would wonder, on that day that's now considered a holiday from the federal government, I would wonder if there's ways in which we could take further action. You know, maybe it's signing up for a course or a workshop to understand better. Maybe it's making some donations locally. Anishnabeg Outreach, if you're in this local region, would be a wonderful one. But maybe where you come from, I know we reach as far as Brantford. There's lots of Indigenous agencies and communities that are working on this same thing around healing and reconciliation and justice and supporting Indigenous peoples who have experienced intergenerational trauma. And you know, there's ways in which you can contribute to that work and be a part of it. We're glad today to be hosting Stephen Jackson, the CEO of Anishnabeg Outreach, and I'm sure as a part of his conversation, you can glean some things that you might be able to do in your own personal life to take action. The important thing, I believe, when we talk about healing, when we talk about justice, when we talk about reconciliation, is those are good things to talk about. Those are good things to research and study and read and gain knowledge on. But if there's no tangible action to anything related to that, then all that stuff you did prior to that is unhelpful. Great, you're more knowledgeable about the ways in which this has all happened. But if you're not taking some tangible action, may I call you to action today to consider the ways in which you can do that. So listen deeply to what Stephen Jackson and the conversation that we have today brings up for you. And as we get closer, or as a lot more information is passed along, be mindful, pay attention to news stories, bring more of that consciousness to how you think about Indigenous persons and how you would want to see a change in our country and in our culture, and even across the globe. One other brief thing I just want to note, changing kind of direction in a little bit of a way. St. Andrew's in Guelph has partnered over the last few years with Knox Guelph to have a team to participate in the Run for the Cure. The Run for the Cure is a run that happens every year in the city of Guelph, across the country, around breast cancer research, funding for that. And we were delighted a few years back to have an in-person walk-run that we joined up, and we were called Presbyterians on the Run. The last couple of years, because of COVID, we've not been able to do our in-person run, and it's all completely virtual. We do have individuals participating, and if you want to support our support of the Run for the Cure, you're welcome to do so. I personally am running, not running, I don't run, walking virtually. Literally walking, but then recording it virtually as a way of participating in the run this year. And a few of our other people are doing that. Sign up, encourage you to connect with the Run for the Cure. It's a great way of bringing to mind the ways in which you can support cancer research, as well as support those who've lost members of their family with cancer and who are continuing that journey as they go through cancer treatments. As a part of our Run for the Cure time a couple years ago, we had a service that was kind of a memorializing and remembering, calling to mind those whom we've lost because of cancer. And so bring that to mind. It's on October the 3rd, and I encourage you to check that out, Run for the Cure. Wherever community you're in, there's probably a run, a walk, virtual one, and figure out ways of supporting that as well. So this Sunday, this service, this episode, this thing that's happening right after this is from Sunday, the 26th of September. It is going to include a ZOOMerview with Stephen Jackson, the CEO of Anishnabeg Outreach. I feel it's going to be a powerful conversation for us to bear witness to and to share. And so please listen deeply as you explore and engage with this episode. And for today, as with every day, may you experience more good news than bad.